welcome. Dana Wolf and I are very pleased to extend a warm welcome to this evening's debate, Russia is Becoming Our Enemy Again. Now, this is not a debate about Russia's domestic arrangements and whether we approve of them. Clearly, President Putin has presided over a massive transfer of wealth and influence to a new Russian elite of former KGB operatives. He's an autocrat who wants to keep his power. Russia is pursuing a far more assertive foreign policy, disrupting oil supply when displeased by its neighbors, threatening a new arms race, attacking the U.S. as, quote, the main violator of freedoms and human rights. On the back of $90 oil, the Russian economy is growing rapidly. The bear is well-fed and snarling, and by all accounts, the Russian public heartily approves. The question tonight, though, is whether a new Cold War is emerging. The most troublesome evidence is Russia's belligerence, even when its interests and ours seem to be aligned. It's hard to imagine that Russia wants a nuclear Iran or a radical Islamic insurgency. So what do they hope to gain by undermining UN pressure on Iran? It's also hard to see the advantage of discouraging foreign capital, technology, and management skill, or how it serves Russian interests to be perceived as an unreliable long-term supplier of energy. On the other hand, it's easy to understand why Russia might be smarting from a loss of empire and international respect, why it might be wary about an American missile defense shield placed in its own backyard. It's easy to see why the former oligarchs were viewed as having gained their wealth illegitimately. And it's understandable why Russia favors economic sanctions to exert pressures in its neighborhood, particularly when sanctions are a favored policy tool of ours. So it's easy to see how Putin's new assertiveness enhances his domestic popularity and power. Is Russia becoming our enemy again, or is it reacting in an understandable way to domestic political considerations, or perhaps to our own mistakes? Well, we have an outstanding panel to help us decide, and a very able moderator in Edward Lucas, a veteran observer of the collapse of the Soviet Union, a longtime Moscow bureau chief for The Economist, fluent in 5 regional languages, and the author of the forthcoming book, The New Cold War. So maybe he's not quite so neutral as he appears. Edward, the evening is yours.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Bob, for your gracious introduction. Now, for those of you who haven't been at one of these debates before, let me just give you a brief rundown of the evening. The members of the teams on both sides are going to give brief 8-minute introductions to their arguments, and 8 minutes, which will be ruthlessly enforced from the chair. And when those are complete, I'm going to have a bit of discussion among the panel and then open up to questions and points from the audience. And then at the end of that, we will have 2-minute summations from each member of the panel and then a vote. And I'm now going to introduce the panel. Although you may have very strong personal views for or against, please refrain from either giving applause or even unmannerly boos until all 6 have been introduced. So for the motion, Claudia Rosett, staff journalist in residence at the Foundation for the Defence of Democracies, Bret Stephens, foreign affairs columnist and member of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, and J. Michael Waller, who's the Annenberg Chair in International Communication at the Institute for World Politics and also Vice President for Information Operations at the Centre for Security Policy. Don't clap. Against the motion, the Senior Fellow of the World Policy Institute and Professor of International Affairs at the New School here in New York, Nina Khrushcheva, Robert Legvold, who's the Marshall D. Schulman Professor of Political Science at Columbia University, and finally Mark Medish, who's the Vice President for the Studies of Russia, China and Eurasia at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Welcome.